This is the bonus section podcast, episode number 33. How do you deal with conflict and personal obstacles? Are you the type of person that knows you were meant for something greater in this lifetime, and that somewhere inside of you, this bigger version of yourself trying to break through, but in spite of all your self-development attempts, you just can't seem to find a way up there? Well, then, hey, you're definitely in the right place. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the bonus section and the host of this podcast, and a person just like you trying to learn how to live the most fulfilling life possible. But to help you take immediate action to get moving in a better direction, as I share these thoughts, we're going to take the notes from each episode and we're going to post them at freethinkingtools.com, freethinkingtools.com. By the way, the bonus section is sort of birthed out of that concept that I was always trying to put together these thinking tools, because no matter what it is that we're pursuing in life, business, personal interest, family, we need tools. We need psychological tools. We need mindset tools. We need them. It's not about motivation. Anybody can yell and scream from the top of a soapbox and get you fired up, but that fades. What you need is a box of tools to go to work on yourself so that you can get what you want. That's what I believe in. That's what this podcast really is about too. All right. So let's deal with this today. How do you deal with conflict and personal obstacles? Sometimes the conversation on this podcast gets a little bit tougher, and I want to challenge myself and you to think about this. And remember, these podcasts are inspired by what's going on outside in my life, that I'm always working on this box of tools. And conflict resolution is a massive skill set. And when you can work on it and you understand it, you can solve a lot. Now, in my context as a real estate broker for 21 years, where I actually help sellers and buyers through the largest emotional transaction, of course, conflict exists almost every time. By definition, negotiation involves conflict. You have a buyer's interest versus a seller's interest. Then there's all the emotional stuff that triggers it. But I also have 5 kids, and I've had to help them navigate all the conflicts in their life. And then my personal interest. So you get it. I'm no rookie at seeing conflict. And I'm also a very passionate guy. The bonus section is a passion project for me. It's something that I get fired up about. And you know, when you look at my other 2 podcasts, I don't get as emotionally charged as I do about this. This means something to me. That involvement in mattering in the human drama matters. And so emotion is really a challenge. And that's the thing that I want to talk about in the first point here. Our first reaction to conflict is typically emotional. Now, I'm no biologist. Let's just talk about the fight or flight syndrome, is that if the big old lion comes out of the woods and you're sitting there taking a nap and it comes straight for you, your first reaction is emotional. Holy moly, right? And so that happens to us. And the reason I use an animal analogy is our animal brain gets emotional immediately. And when conflict comes, that's conflict. That's life or death conflict. So we get emotional because something in the brain triggers us to be emotional. And so your first reaction, you just have to embrace it, that anytime there's going to be conflict, it's going to be an emotional one, juxtaposed against a logical one, right? So you could say in the heat of that kind of a moment, does the prey all of a sudden look at itself and say, well, logically, I'm going to get up and I'm going to give this lion a head fake to the left or the right, and I'm going to take off the other way. That might be the logical response of the gazelle. I say that because I think I've seen that on YouTube, where a lion goes flying by a gazelle, gives a little head bob, right? That's a logical response. Emotional response is usually to get up and be discombobulated and get caught like, quote unquote, the proverbial deer in the headlights and get run over by the car. And that's what happens. Now, we're not in a life or death situation, but we're still in that animalistic, emotional first moment. So our natural tendency, and I'm not saying this for everybody, but this is, look, if you don't have this issue, then you don't even need this podcast, because you're so logical that you seem in calm. You've mastered this already. Okay. So you guys can go for a run, go for a walk. But for the rest of us, we have to deal with that emotional reaction. And especially in the context of business or when you're young and you're trying to pursue a career. Those are two things that are real in my world. My kids beginning their career and being emotional about that and, going into these cognitive distortions of over-exaggeration quickly. Boom. The world is ending simply because you didn't pass a test or you didn't get the part or, the person at work was rude to you. Well, this is it. I don't want to be this anymore. And boom, right? Emotional reaction. And so when you look at conflict and you recognize that, and again, I think the concept here at the bonus section is trying to bring things to a conscious level. The subconscious is so powerful that it is the thing that can guide us, but we have to start getting things to a conscious level so we recognize ourselves, like an out-of-body experience. Imagine yourself in a conflict. You pick one that you're in now, something that matters to you. And so you imagine yourself up above it in the theater of your mind, watching you and watching them, whoever they are, all right? And you look down and you look at yourself as that player on the stage and you say, what emotions am I using or that have a hold of me? Well, what's the emotional reaction? Just like a play, you're up there. And you see that in the opening act when somebody comes out, let's say the antagonist comes out and antagonizes you. Well, you are this, or you didn't do that, or you'll never be this, and boom, you have a real agitation. Okay. And your emotional, response is, well, screw you. And, now we have a conflict. Now we have a full-blown emotionally charged conflict. That's what we have, right? And if we just sit there and we watch all of this happen, we see that it escalates until something happens, a fight physically, a fight proverbially, or I guess, what's the best way to put it? An emotional shutdown. Everybody goes the other way, and now nobody's talking to each other. I mean, think about the family rifts where brothers and sisters and cousins haven't talked to each other. I haven't talked to them in years, right? Like almost like it's a badge of courage or a reward for my stubbornness, like, right? That's the extreme emotional reaction to conflict. We shut down, we shut them off, they're out of our lives. Don't get me wrong, in some cases, that conflict, getting somebody out of your life, reporting them for something bad, all that's a different subject, okay? I'm just saying where nobody's been bodily harmed, okay? I mean, it can end up in a fist fight. Something like that can happen. But let's just presume that there's a potential for resolution. Let's just assume that that's a core of this podcast today, right? The starting point for that revolution is to begin to ask why there's conflict. And it's best to not leave the stage. So let's go back to the theater of the mind for a second and say we have these two people. It's definitely escalating towards an ugly spot. But if we look down and we just let this person keep yelling and screaming, we just go quiet. We don't leave. We don't throw a tantrum. We just go quiet. And while they're ranting and raving, which isn't going to solve anything, we just simply start to ask, why is this conflict existing? And we ask. So we try to pull ourselves from that emotional state, and it can be tough, especially if there's personal attack going on. But you start to ask yourself, why? Why does this conflict even exist? How did it start? And I don't mean when the antagonist entered the stage. Before then. Well before then. When did this conflict start? Why is it happening? So this question of why becomes very powerful, right? Becomes very powerful. And so you just have to get logical when you ask why. You can, but if you're staring down the end of your arm with your finger pointed, well, why? Because he said, she said, no, let's bend at the elbow and say, why am I involved in this conflict? What role am I playing that I would have, even if it's just the antagonists, if it's their perception of something we did, something we said, who we are, what's happening, just ask, why do they believe I'm involved in this conflict? Even if you can't ask yourself straight up, did I do something? That's tough to look in the mirror, especially when you're emotionally charged and say, well, what did I do? Why am I in this? Did I do something? Because you did in some form or fashion. Whether it was nefarious or not. Let's say an antagonist is mad at you because they're envious of your success. You did something. You became successful. You did the right thing. And to sit here and say, well, I was nice to you, and don't be mad at me. Yes, it doesn't matter. You're part of the conflict because you did something. Benevolent or malevolent, I don't care. But you're a player in this because that other human being sees you as a player. Easy context. Like I said, I'll go back to my business. You make an offer on a property that's less than what the seller wants, and the seller starts thinking that you're trying to take advantage of them and personalizes it and goes off in this cognitive distortion that you're a monster and all you did was logically put something in. Well, you get mad and say, well, screw that. That's bad vibes. See what I'm saying? You can apply this to any type of conflict. Familial, with other family members, business-wise, career-wise. This conflict could be with almost like, let's personify your career, the career you really want. And you start to look at it because this is a real thing that happens with my kids and agents that want to do, well, I shouldn't have done this in the first place. That career is not for me. And that career is for these types of people. And we pick a fight with that. So we are a player in that. We can't deny that. So it's about this beginning of taking responsibility for simply being a part of the conflict for a real reason. I mean, I'm not talking about the random where somebody comes along and they bump into you on a street and they start. But then again, you are involved in that one too. You're walking down the street and they bumped into you. So you were there. So we just have to see that we are really a part of this conflict, whether we malevolently agitated this antagonist or whether benevolently we were just doing us and we intimidated them and we provoked them that way. That's just what conflict is, right? And it exists and it's not going away. So it is our ability to solve it. And it starts with asking ourselves, why does this person perceive I should be in this conflict? Why am I? Did I do something? You get in there and you start asking questions because you got to pull it up to the conscious level while you're in it. Rather than emotionally running away with it and just getting mad, you're a part of it for some reason. Figure that out. Then the next point is, if you keep asking how and why the conflict started, then you're getting to the real root. And again, there's this interesting concept. Often people will say, but that's so complex, especially if it's familiar. It goes back, all the way to when we were kids and this happened and they said that and this didn't work out. Well, you think that's going to make it more complex, but actually the more you look at it, you're peeling back more and more of the noise to get to some real heartbeat, some real root cause. So we believe that by asking why and being curious and digging in. Now, I know there's a lot of people, and there are a lot of people in my life that just ask why because they're processing it and they're throwing that up on you instead of actually going through the process. That can be confusing when you're asking why and you're not really truly asking. It's a rhetorical why so you can hear yourself talk. I'm talking about asking yourself why so that you are forcing yourself to go deeper and getting more real. So let's go back to what you thought was benevolent. Well, I just worked hard and I became a doctor and I became successful and my brother's mad at me because I became it. No, that's what you created the story around. But what you don't remember is if you keep asking why when you were kids and you wanted to be a doctor and he wanted to be a professional hockey player, you crapped on his dream. And that hurt him back there, and he hasn't forgotten that. And you remember it too, because now you kind of passive-aggressive keep bringing it up, right? See what I'm saying? I'm making this stuff up for examples because you're going to have to take this information and go practically apply it to your conflict resolution. But as you go down deeper and deeper and deeper, it typically comes to something that's pretty straightforward. There's something unresolved. There's something basic. And it can be really painful, or maybe not so much. Maybe just stupid logic. Oh my gosh, all that noise and yelling and screaming. And all it was this? Yeah, that's all you had to do. Well, why didn't you come out and say that? I don't know. I came out, I was pissed off. And I was yelling and screaming. I don't know. But see, the resolution began with this asking why, what did I do, how am I involved? And then we keep asking, could it be something else? Could it be something else? And it's sort of like division. When you're finding common factors in simple division, breaking it down to its very base factors, where there's no more division possible. And then it reveals itself as something quite simple. The number 2, for example, right? Pretty simple. But when you're looking at a big, long, even number, you don't really see the twos at the bottom. So it's the same thing with conflict resolution. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And again, you have to be honest with yourself. There's going to be some hard stuff because eventually in there, you're going to find something that makes you uncomfortable. Nobody's perfect, so you're not going to go smoothly down. Wow, this was wonderful, and I did this, and I'm so benevolent. Look at me, right? It's not going to end up like that. You're going to find something that you are part of. You're the root cause of something. Even if it wasn't intentionally there to be harmful, it agitated something. And again, the presumption here is that you want to resolve this, right? And you don't want to leave these unresolved conflicts out there, even if you never become friends again or you never talk them. It's still good to resolve it for you from a selfish standpoint to free yourself of the burden. I'm not saying that you're always going to have an equal player on the other side where it gets fully resolved, but at least you're not the problem. You did your very best to resolve this conflict, and that brings me to the last point here. That once you get down to these roots, these common denominators, these base factors, right? Make the first move towards reconciliation. And that will invoke the power of the law of reciprocity. Let me get into this for a second. One of the hardest things for us to do is to humble ourselves to say, I'm sorry, or I hear you, and I never saw it your way until right now. You know, that's making a first move. The words you use for resolution and reconciliation are so powerful and they're so freeing. Think about like I'm sorry as a phrase that's the master key to let everybody out of jail. See, the jail of this conflict, use this as an image in your mind. We're locked in this jail cell of conflict. Even if we run away, we don't talk to each other. Okay, so the bar is expanded. You're still in the cell. You know you are. And it's this burden. And if you would just say, see, we're always waiting for the other side. You know my favorite saying here, and I'll say it again at the end of this one. Nobody's coming for you. So why does it have to be the other person in the conflict? Well, I'm not doing anything till they do it. Why? Why does that have to be the case? Maybe that's why you're not asking deep enough. Maybe it's your own hubris. It's your own insecurity. It's your own hurt. It's your own fear. See how you get down those common denominators? What are you hurt by? How long ago did it take? Why are you passive? You know you're successful. Why are you aggressively pestering somebody that is a friend, a family? Why are you doing that? Oh, because they hurt you way back when. Did you ever say that to them? Right? Do they even know? Well, if you want to get to that full resolution, say, I'm sorry. I never saw it this way. I never saw me pestering you like this, but I realize I think I have. Have I? Now, you still have this big thing in the jar where you were hurt by them, but you want to reconcile it at the deepest level so it really gets resolved. But if you go in there and you start this first, you invoke this incredible law of reciprocity. And that law of reciprocity is so powerful, they will give you back a key to get out with them. Let that sink in for a second. So everybody's looking for this key out of jail here. And this law of reciprocity, this gift-giving thing, you know how it works. If you get a gift, you can't wait to give that gift back to somebody. You think about it for years even. It's very powerful. So the greatest gift in resolution and reconciliation during conflict is to make the first move in a humble way that shows the other side you truly want resolution and reconciliation, not conditions. Stop all your crappy conditions. Unconditional surrender. Unconditional. To be vulnerable at the highest level. I know it's not easy. I'm not saying I do this all the time. I have to walk away and let things cool down and then come back and resolve it. That's why I'm bringing it up. I think this is difficult to do. So let me go back over these points. How do you deal with conflict and personal obstacles that are caused by conflict? Well, number one point, our first reaction to conflict is typically emotional. Be cognizant of that. That when something like agitates you, the antagonist comes on stage, your first reaction is emotional and animalistic. But beware, you don't want to be the gazelle who doesn't know how to make a move when the lion's coming. You don't want to be the deer in the headlights. So be aware that your first reaction is emotional. Bring it up to the conscious level so it doesn't trip you up. Next, the starting point for resolution is asking, why is this conflict happening in the first place? Why am I jumping across the road in the middle of the dark, said the deer, right? Why am I laying so still right by the hidden tree, said the gazelle? Just start asking these questions. Why is this conflict so easy for me to run into? Right? Next point, keep asking how and why and whatever it takes that this conflict even exists, because you're doing that common division. You're breaking it down to the lowest common denominator so you can see the real root, the truth. What is it, the truth of this? So we're pulling more down to the logical, the black and white. And that's more an opportunity for you. You can do it with the other person, but you better get to the root of your own reason that you're involved in this, and the real reason, not what you think they did and how you got there, but really, how am I here? It takes a lot of humility and it takes some persistence to get there. But the fourth point was, once you get there and you see truly that you have a hand in this somehow, even if you still believe in your heart that you're right, resist the urge to be right and to win anything here, and make the first move towards reconciliation. Because when you make the first move, you invoke this incredible power, this law of reciprocity, which becomes the key to let you both out of the jail of this conflict. All right, let me summarize it this way. Life is filled with the struggle that causes conflict. Struggle everywhere causes this conflict. When that conflict involves you personally, it immediately triggers strong negative emotions which hamper your ability to resolve any of these issues. So the way out of that state starts with digging into why the conflict really exists at its simplest root cause, and then making the first move to resolve it by giving up something, to invoke the law of reciprocity and the power of humility to heal the whole situation. All right, now remember, you can take immediate action to get moving in a better direction, because we take all the notes from each episode and we post them over at freethinkingtools.com. Also, don't forget, you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen so that you don't miss out on any of the insights each time we upload these episodes. We also post all of our episodes on our social media channels. We syndicate them out there every time. You can find us on all of them: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, blah, 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 etc. We're out there. We're not hard to find. So just go find us and then turn on the notifications on your favorite platform so every time we post, you know. And you're looking for the bonus section. The bonus section. Okay. We also appreciate it if you would share our content with other people just like you, people that are trying to self-fulfill and self-improve, and we're all struggling with that together. Share this with them. Then you can join that mission of becoming a person for others that we're on here. Hey, thanks for listening, but remember this, and I told you I was going to say it, nobody's coming for you. So go get to work on a plan for your life, and I will see you in the next episode to help you do that. Thanks for listening again.